The ocean has always been a place of mystery, beauty, and danger. For centuries, humans have tried to conquer it, to sail across its vast and unpredictable waters in search of new lands, new opportunities, and new beginnings. But sometimes, even our greatest achievements turn into our greatest tragedies. This is the story of the Titanic, a ship that was called Unsinkable, a dream that turned into a nightmare, and a disaster that the world would never forget. In the early 1900s, the world was changing rapidly. Technology was advancing, industries were booming, and people believed that nothing was impossible anymore. It was during this time that a British shipping company, the White Star Line, decided to build the most luxurious and largest passenger ship ever seen. They wanted to create something so magnificent that it would dominate the oceans and set a new standard for travel. That ship would be called RMS Titanic. The Titanic was not just a ship, it was a symbol of human ambition. It was designed with the latest technology of the time, featuring advanced safety systems, watertight compartments, and powerful engines. The ship was nearly 882 feet long, taller than most buildings of its time, and weighed over 46,000 tons. It was a floating city, complete with grand staircases, luxurious dining halls, swimming pools, and even a gymnasium. For those who could afford it, traveling on the Titanic was not just a journey, it was an experience of a lifetime. Passengers from all walks of life boarded the Titanic. There were wealthy businessmen and celebrities enjoying first-class luxury, middle-class families traveling in second class, and immigrants packed into third class, hoping for a better life in America. Each person carried their own dreams, their own stories, and their own reasons for stepping onto that ship. None of them knew that this journey would become one of the most tragic events in history. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic set sail from Southampton, England. Crowds gathered to watch as the massive ship slowly left the dock. There was excitement in the air, a sense of pride and wonder. People waved goodbye to their loved ones, confident that they would arrive safely in New York. The ship made stops in Cherbourg, France, and Queenstown, Ireland, picking up more passengers before heading out into the vast Atlantic Ocean. For the first few days, everything seemed perfect. The weather was calm, the sea was smooth, and the passengers enjoyed their time on board. First-class guests dined on extravagant meals, attended parties, and relaxed in luxurious surroundings. Meanwhile, those in lower classes found joy in music, dancing, and the hope of a new life ahead. The Titanic moved steadily forward, cutting through the ocean with ease. However, beneath this calm surface, danger was slowly approaching. The North Atlantic was known for its icy waters, especially during that time of year. Icebergs had begun drifting south from Greenland, creating a deadly path for ships crossing the ocean. Several warnings were sent to the Titanic by other ships, alerting them to the presence of ice ahead. But these warnings were not treated with the urgency they deserved. Captain Edward Smith, an experienced sailor nearing retirement, was in command of the Titanic. He had spent decades at sea and was widely respected. But even he could not have imagined what was about to happen. Despite the warnings, the Titanic continued to travel at high speed. There was confidence, perhaps too much confidence, that the ship could handle any danger. On the night of April 14, 1912, the temperature dropped sharply. The sea was unusually calm, making it difficult to spot icebergs because there were no waves breaking against them. The sky was clear, filled with stars, but the darkness of the ocean made it nearly impossible to see what lay ahead. At around 11:40 p.m., a lookout named Frederick Fleet spotted something directly in the ship's path. It was an iceberg. He immediately rang the warning bell and alerted the bridge. The officers reacted quickly, ordering the ship to turn and attempting to avoid the collision, but it was too late. The Titanic struck the iceberg along its starboard side. The impact was not a dramatic crash, as many might imagine. Instead, it was a series of scraping sounds as the iceberg tore through the ship's hull. Below the surface, the damage was catastrophic. Several of the watertight compartments were breached, allowing water to flood in rapidly. At first, many passengers didn't realize the seriousness of the situation. Some barely felt the impact. Others were curious, stepping out onto the decks to see what had happened. But as the crew began to assess the damage, the truth became clear. The Titanic was doomed. The ship had been designed to stay afloat even if a few compartments were flooded. But the iceberg had damaged too many sections. Water was pouring in faster than it could be controlled. Within minutes, it became evident that the Titanic would not survive. Captain Smith gave the order to prepare the lifeboats. But there was a major problem. There were not enough lifeboats for everyone on board. At the time, lifeboat regulations were outdated, and the Titanic carried only 20 lifeboats, enough for about half of the passengers and crew. It was a decision that would cost many lives. As the situation grew more serious, the crew began waking passengers and instructing them to put on life jackets. At first, there was confusion and disbelief. Many people didn't want to leave the safety and warmth of the ship. Some thought it was just a precaution. Others refused to believe that such a grand ship could sink. The rule of women and children first was enforced as the lifeboats were loaded. This meant that many men had to stay behind, knowing they might not survive. Families were separated, husbands saying goodbye to their wives, parents holding on to their children for the last time. It was a scene filled with heartbreak and unimaginable fear. As the lifeboats were lowered into the freezing ocean, many of them were not filled to capacity. Fear, confusion, and lack of clear instructions led to missed opportunities to save more lives. Meanwhile, the ship continued to sink lower into the water. The band on board the Titanic famously continued to play music as the ship went down. Their purpose was to calm the passengers and prevent panic. Even in the face of death, they chose to bring comfort to others. It was an act of bravery that would be remembered for generations. By around 2:00 a.m. on April 15, the situation had become desperate. The front of the ship was completely submerged, and the stern was rising high into the air. People clung to whatever they could, trying to escape the icy water. The temperature of the ocean was so cold that survival in it was nearly impossible. At approximately 2:20 a.m., the Titanic broke apart and disappeared beneath the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. In just a few hours, the unsinkable ship was gone. Over 1,500 people lost their lives that night, making it one of the deadliest maritime disasters in history. Those who survived did so under horrific conditions. The lifeboats floated in the freezing darkness, surrounded by cries for help that slowly faded away. The silence that followed was haunting. Eventually, a nearby ship, the RMS Carpathia, arrived to rescue the survivors. But for many, it was too late. The tragedy of the Titanic shocked the world. News spread quickly, and people everywhere struggled to understand how such a disaster could have happened. Investigations revealed a series of failures, ignored warnings, insufficient lifeboats, and overconfidence in technology. In the years that followed, new safety regulations were introduced to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Ships were required to carry enough lifeboats for everyone on board, and better communication systems were put in place. The Titanic changed the way the world approached maritime safety. But beyond the lessons learned, the story of the Titanic remains deeply human. It is a story of hope and dreams, of courage and sacrifice, of love and loss. It reminds us that no matter how advanced we become, we are never truly in control of nature. Even today, more than a century later, the Titanic continues to capture our imagination. Its wreck lies deep beneath the ocean, a silent reminder of what happened that fateful night. Explorers have visited it, bringing back images and artifacts that keep its story alive. The Titanic is not just a shipwreck, it is a symbol of ambition, of human error, and of the fragile nature of life. It teaches us to respect the forces of the world around us and to never underestimate the risks we face. As we look back on the tragic story of the Titanic, we remember the lives that were lost and the stories that were never completed. We remember the bravery of those who gave up their seats in lifeboats, the musicians who played until the end, and the countless individuals who faced their final moments with dignity. History is filled with moments that shape our understanding of the world, and the Titanic is one of them. It stands as a powerful reminder that even in our greatest achievements, there can be hidden dangers, and sometimes it is only through tragedy that we learn the lessons that truly matter. The ocean remains vast and mysterious, but the story of the Titanic ensures that we will never forget what happened on that cold April night in 1912. It is a story that continues to live on, not just in books and movies, but in the hearts of people around the world. And perhaps that is why the Titanic still matters today. Because it is more than history, it is a reminder of who we are, what we strive for, and what we must never take for granted.